Hey, you're listening to Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy with sex therapist Laurie Watson and couples therapist Dr. Adam Mathews. And we are here today to talk about sexually surviving breast cancer. It's October. And this is a very serious topic, but we have a lot to say about it, and I have a lot of hope about this.
Yeah, and Laurie, I think a lot of people would not naturally connect surviving breast cancer to sexual issues. Help us make sense of that. What's the connection
right.
there?
I think that, unfortunately, breast cancer survivors, women with breast cancer, do not realize how many sexual side effects they're going to have because of treatment other than the gross wound of losing their breast, which is, right, an amputation in the most intimate way. So we know that's a horrible wound. And I will say breast cancer survivors often tell me that somebody with huge insensitivity has said to them, well, you lost your breast, but you still have your life. And I mean, it's like female castration.
Yeah, it's a loss. It's a significant loss.
Right. It's awful. But I also think that for women, the treatment options include drugs that change their hormone composition. So, and we'll talk about that maybe as we go. But basically, tamoxifen or aromatase inhibitors, they work a little bit differently. Tamoxifen is used for pre-menopausal women and aromatase inhibitors for postmenopausal women. Sometimes they also have tamoxifen. But those drugs essentially bind with hormones. I'm not sure of the exact mechanism, but they absorb the estrogen in the body.
Okay.
And so the woman is instantly, nearly medically menopausal.
Okay.
So she goes from, especially for the injury for a young 38-year-old breast cancer survivor is she may lose both breasts, which is an arousal pattern and pathway. Now she's on a drug and her body feels like a 62-year-old woman. So she has no desire because a woman
her
needs...
libido is lowered.
Her libido is gone. Her breasts are gone. And now sex hurts. So it's this gigantic problem.
So it goes from being really enjoyable to being really painful.
Exactly.
And let alone just not wanting to have it.
And not wanting it. Yeah.
So when does that typically start? Does that know that there's treatment before mastectomy and afterwards as well? Mm-hmm. So when does all that begin to happen generally in the course of treatment?
Yeah. So, I think the first sex-robbing problem with breast cancer is just the cancer diagnosis. Yeah. Even the word cancer is just, it evokes fear in us, and that fear, when it's happening to you, can just, it's like all systems shut down except for survival. And sex for many women is something that they do when they feel relaxed. They do that when everything else is done. And suddenly, if you feel like your very life is at risk, the list just got longer of what you want to accomplish. The things that are important to you may be very, very different. I got to clean out my house. I got to, write diaries to the children. I don't have any time for this relaxed moment of pleasure.
Yeah, and fear and anxiety have got to shoot through the roof as well.
They do.
Which are big-time sex inhibitors.
Right. And oftentimes doctors, in an effort really to help the women cope with panic attacks and fear, they'll give them an SSRI, which is an antidepressant. And I don't think we've talked about this very much on this show, but antidepressants, one of their properties, essentially, especially the SSRI type, is that it grabs libido, it lowers libido, and it makes orgasm harder. So here she's in fear. Right from the beginning, there are issues that impact her sexuality.
Yeah, that sounds
and her
just
sexual feelings.
There's just a lot of things that are working together. It sounds almost like a perfect storm.
It is
to reduce
a perfect storm.
Yeah,
to reduce sexual feeling and sexual connection between her and her partner. And I think men as well. They're terrified. They might lose their wife. They don't know, what this means necessarily. Neither one of them knows. Sometimes the doctor doesn't know, and even if it's a bad diagnosis, he doesn't know if she's going to be have some sort of luck on her side. And even if it's a good diagnosis, there's, with particular types of breast cancer, recurrence is possible. And so tremendous fear in both the woman and in her partner.
So it's really a crisis for the couple.
Yes.
It's very obviously very personal for the woman, but it's a crisis for the couple as well. And living
is.
under that crisis, sex tends to take a back seat.
Yeah, and I think, this is something that's not talked about early enough, but it is a sexual crisis for the man as well.
Yeah.
Especially if he's a breast guy, and he's loved her breasts, and suddenly she's going to lose him. He, too, is going to lose a pathway of arousal. And that may, for him, feel so utterly selfish to think about.
Yeah.
Like, how could I be thinking about the loss of my enjoyment when she's going to go through this gross mutilization? But the truth is he loses something, and it's painful. And oftentimes they have no way to talk about that.
Oh, yeah. How
could you say that if you were a man, right?
Difficult, yeah.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
if that was a thought, it's going to be very hard to vocalize or to even to bring up at all.
Right. Yeah, my husband had a prostate cancer scare, and one of the problems with prostate cancer is you lose your erections, basically, with the treatment and the surgery. And he and I had been processing quite a bit together about this, but at some point I said to a friend of mine, and he could lose his erections, and that I really feel that this is going to horribly impact our sexual life. And my friend was like, "You are so selfish to think that. He could have cancer," and really shamed me for any kind of desire for a continuing sexual relationship as I knew it.
Yeah.
Fortunately, he didn't. But
I think in that, too, it's important for the couple to remember that there's going to be lots of different thoughts like that, feelings like that. And the feelings themselves, right, are not bad. That's
right.
Like the feeling of loss or the feeling of what it's going to do to your sexual relationship, that's not the part that's necessarily damaging to your relationship if you can be patient with one another in that, because there's going to be thoughts and feelings that the woman's going to go through that are going to be hard for the man to understand, because it's not him that is experiencing that. Do you agree with that?
I do. And I think what you're saying is so powerful. We are not our feelings.
Yeah.
And if we can ever observe our feelings and say, I'm feeling a lot of anxiety, but I am not anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm just, anxiety is coursing through my body. And it's almost like that tiny separate step of observation about our feelings gives us a measure of freedom.
Yeah.
I am not what I think, and feelings pass. They pass through us. Even this terrible panic and fear will pass through me. Yeah. So, I mean, you said, when does the sex disconnect happen? It's like right at the beginning. One of the things I tell couples is, I wish I could get to them sooner. And so I'm going to say this, and I don't know if you're going to skip this podcast because you don't have cancer or something, but if you know of somebody, or if you ever had to go through this, if there were a way to continue to make love during the process and to continue to give her pleasure, you're really preserving sex. During the treatment and during the process, if a man could unselfishly say, it's a your night only, her night only, because so many women will give a quickie, right? It's like, I'm not into it, but let's just go for it. Anyway. But he should give her orgasms, because that preserves desire. It also relaxes her, gives her stress relief, especially if she doesn't have to think about it, think about reciprocating. That helps. And what happens throughout the stages is eventually, by the time they get to me, she's on a drug that has dried her vagina. They haven't had sex for a year.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's been treatment, maybe reconstruction, all that.
Yeah. So that desire hasn't been fed, like you're talking about, in that long, as opposed to being intentional about it so that doesn't happen, is what I hear. What I hear you saying.
Exactly. So if he can kind of keep her desire alive, that would be great. Maybe just comforting her, orgasms, foot rubs, body rubs, rub anywhere it doesn't hurt, because it hurts a lot of places when you have breast cancer. There's radiation, there's chemo, all of that. Probably the other thing I see is it's very, very hard for survivors to talk about the loss of their breast, even, and women kind of rate it. Some women, their breast is just changed because they have a lumpectomy, and they feel selfish because their girlfriend had double mastectomy. But any kind of change on your organ, that is your sex organ, especially for females, it's our identifying sexual trait, what the world sees, can be very traumatic.
Yeah. We've used this word already, but the loss of that there's got to be a grief reaction too, as well.
Absolutely.
Right? And everything that comes with grief. So anger, bargaining, like that, getting to acceptance, and that is going to take some time.
Right. It takes quite a bit of process.
Yeah.
Just the way, people who lose a foot, there's phantom pain, there's gross self-image wounding when you lose a part of your body. And when you lose a part of your body that's identified with your sexual pleasure, I mean, it's horrible. I say it's sort of like a Picasso effect. Women who they saw themselves maybe as a Renoir or something, and suddenly their body doesn't even look like their body.
It doesn't reflect what they have in their mind or the way that it's supposed to look.
Right. So that's a huge process to go through. And I think, and then to think about the functioning of this new body is really tough. Well, I know this is a serious subject. It is October, and I will say for you who listen, who are local, we're doing a sexual survivor day for breast cancer survivors, how to survive breast cancer sexually intact. And you can call us at Awakenings to get an appointment. And we're spending a whole day. I think it's October 22nd. It's sort of later in the month.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll be right back. This is Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy with sex therapist Laurie Watson and couples therapist Dr. Adam Mathews.
Wanting Sex Again. How to Rediscover Desire and Heal a Sexless Marriage by certified sex therapist Laurie Watson.
Each chapter is designed to fix one of the problems that cause low libido, from early marriage through the childbearing years, even all the way through menopause. I've also had men read it and tell me that for them it was the most hopeful thing they read about resolving sexual problems.
Look for Wanting Sex Again on Amazon.com. You can also talk to Laurie Watson for therapy in person or via Skype.
I offer couples counseling and sex therapy, and I think about both aspects of the relationship, emotional intimacy and sexual technique, and that combination together helps marriages be happy.
Improve your sex and improve your relationship with Awakening Center for Couples and Intimacy. Find out more at awakenloveandsex.com and sign up for their next couples retreat weekend, hosted by Laurie Watson. awakenloveandsex.com. Awaken what's possible.
It is one of my great joys in life to be able to really help individuals and couples find strength in their relationships and really find hope again.
Licensed marriage and family therapist Dr. Adam Mathews from Mathews Counseling.
I work with a wide variety of issues, including depression and anxiety, marital issues, issues with adolescence. I believe that therapy should be designed around you, that it should be personalized to who you are and to your unique situation.
Therapy is available in office, online, and by phone.
I want therapy to be comfortable for everyone. At our office, you'll find that we sit around a fireplace in deep, comfortable chairs, look at the problem differently, and offer practical solutions for you to take home and utilize outside of the therapy room.
Schedule today and rediscover hope.
You can find me on the web at mathewscounseling.net, Mathews with one T. You can contact us through email or phone and find a lot of resources on our website, mathewscounseling.net.
Hey, we're back with Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy and sex therapist Laurie Watson and couples therapist Dr. Adam Mathews, talking about a really serious but important subject, how to sexually survive breast cancer. We've been talking about mastectomy and the loss of breasts. And
that is so significant, Laurie, and such a big deal. I mean, I think about it. How do we get through that? Mm-hmm. How does a woman get through that kind of deep loss, that deep kind of removal of something that's such an identifying part of her? How do we begin to move through it in a healthy way?
Well, I think you talked about the stages of grief, and I think one really important stage is that she needs to rage. I mean, she needs to rage like nobody's listening.
Yeah.
And that is often something that cannot be done with your family members and your loved ones because they don't know what you're going through, and they'll say the wrong thing, and your friends will say the wrong thing. And it's like you need to rail at how unfair this is. And I think usually that's best done in a group of other survivors, who really know what it's like, who get it, and I think that you have freedom there to say, this is so unfair, and talk about that where nobody's going to, feel like they need to comfort you and that they're, somehow or another have to contain this rage. It's like, you got to get it out.
Yeah. And that seems to be, might be a place too where kind of those unspoken selfish feelings or those feelings that seem selfish to us that we have a hard time vocalizing to our friends and family, to our partner, that it seems like that might be a place as well that she could say those things in a judgment-free zone.
With women who get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, too, that one of the problems is, who am I now as a sexual being? That they have to somehow or another get through and redefine their sexual identity.
Yeah, because the breast is so tied to femininity, as you were talking about before.
Exactly. And I think she has to struggle with what makes me female, what makes me feminine, and that's just not something that most of us define.
Yeah,
I mean, certainly there are people who struggle with gender, right?
Yeah,
and in many ways. But I think when you have been decidedly female in your gender orientation, and then suddenly you lose your breasts, it's like, okay, but then how am I defined?
Yeah.
And how will others see me?
And that's not a quick. There's not a quick answer to that, is there?
There isn't.
Like, that's going to be a personal wrestling. That, do you think that for a woman that she has to just embrace that search or that wrestling? Like, is it
Right.
is it
I
just
know that
leaning into
it's
it?
normal.
Or?
Yeah. Yeah, she has to go through that, and it's another darn thing she has to do. All of this, she thought she just had to survive the knife. She had to survive the treatment, and now she has to survive psychologically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a massive injury.
Yeah. There's an obvious connection there between that identity loss and sex, right? And having the difficulty of entering into a sexual relationship again, or re-engaging sex, or even maintaining sex, if that's the identity crisis that you're going through, right? That makes it super difficult.
Absolutely. I think we are socialized, right, as women to be responders and the object of desire. And we are in a breast-obsessed culture. I mean, America is breast-obsessed. And so if you're supposed to inspire desire in your partner and you don't have breasts, maybe pre-reconstruction, or you've decided against reconstruction, or they can't reconstruct the breast, there is like, am I even desirable? And if I'm not desirable, am I sexual? It's sort of like that. If the tree falls in the forest and nobody's there to hear it, is there a noise? And it's like, without breasts, if there's nobody, or if I believe I'm not desirable, am I still sexual?
Yeah. That seems to me to raise an issue about how that seems very partner dependent as well. Right? It seems like a woman's partner can be very helpful in that and very supportive in that. How does the partner do that from your perspective? How do they begin to be supportive of the woman in that kind of, identity crisis?
I think being a loving mirror, a mirror that says you are beautiful, and literally saying it, that the research shows that if a woman's partner says to her, you are beautiful to me, post breast cancer, or surgery, that is the number one healer of her sexual identity. I mean,
she has somebody reflecting that back.
Yeah, reflecting back that she is beautiful and sexual. That's it. I mean, it's so simple. We're not there yet, but prostate cancer survivors too, if his female partner will say to him, you are virile, that you are a man to me, regardless of the quality of his erection, that's it.
Well, it would seem too that might have to be restated multiple times, that the partner might have to be persistent in saying you're beautiful, because my guess is the woman
this
is not going to
process.
The breast cancer survivor is not going to receive that at first glance, at first brush.
And there's
You're not gonna
hills
say it
and
one time.
valleys, and times she's going to need to hear it over and over. But I think it's that sense, especially when he looks at her, the first time after surgery with scars and things like that. That's a moment that these women dread. Like, what is he going to see? I can barely look at myself, or maybe haven't looked at myself. The first time I look at myself is going to be through his eyes. Yeah. When I look at my new body, it's him looking at me.
Yeah. So the partner being aware of that.
It's an enormously important moment.
Yeah.
So, yeah. This is a tough subject. It's also one close to my heart. My sister is a breast cancer survivor, so I think about it a lot. I think sexually, too, just on a practical level, women, when they lose their breasts and they lose their nipples, even with reconstruction, right, they never get the feeling back. They never get the nipple pathway back. Mm-hmm. And so for some women, the nipple pathway is nothing. But for other women, it's a huge pathway to actually technically get aroused. And without it, they just, one more loss, right? There are so many losses. Sometimes breast play alone actually can bring women to orgasm, and
so
that's gone.
If that is a pathway for that woman, like, how do you begin to re-engage sexually? Like, what's some avenues that the couple's going to have to go through to try to find what now is stimulating, to find new pathways to help her orgasm and help stimulate her?
So I had a woman who was in a newer relationship post-breast cancer. And one of the things I thought was lovely that the man asked was, where can I touch you? Where do you feel? And she literally traced her finger over her body to show him, I have feeling here, I don't have feeling there. You can touch me there, but I don't feel anything. And he really wanted to know where it was. And I think erotic pathways that maybe are unexplored, or are lesser, could take on more significance, like nibbling on her ear or kissing her under her arm. I mean, there's lots of really erotic places that can be touched and be part of the sexual experience. And most of the time, her genitals still are a pathway. But this is the big problem. I mean, we got to get to this, is what do you do about all the things? And I think because of the drugs that they're using to prevent cancer from coming back or to minimize the secondary risk of a recurrence, is obviously the vagina is drier. So you need to use a lubricant every time. Okay. I recommend coconut oil because it's kind of a little thicker, so it prevents tearing and it makes it more comfortable. And I think that, women with breast cancer, if they are becoming sexual again, they can't just jump into intercourse. They have to have, stimulation, digital dilation. So that means the man has to put his fingers in her vagina, maybe the use of toys, dilators. She might have to see a PT. I mean, all of that can help sort of with the dryness and the atrophy. And I probably would say the last thing is, redefine sex as pleasure, not as painful intercourse, and know that most of the time, see a sex therapist. We can get you through to something that is pleasurable again, usually including intercourse.
Yeah. Of all of that, Laurie, I think that's all good. I hope people go back and kind of make a list of all those things that you're saying, because there's some intentionality that's going to have to go into the sexual relationship that maybe wasn't there before.
Absolutely
it's going to
wasn't
be
there before.
It's going to be a little more work, but that they can get that. But what do you think? I mean, what was the one takeaway? If there was going to be one thing that breast cancer survivors and supporters of breast cancer survivors and partners of breast cancer survivors were going to take away from what we've been talking about, what's the one thing that you would say that would be? I
think that there is hope to have a full erotic life again. Yeah, so absolutely. It's complicated and it's complex, and it includes your psychology, your relationship, your body, your survivorship. But all of it together, there are good people out there if you're across this nation. First of all, we'll do Skype consultation with you too. So call us up. Again, October 22nd, Awakenings, we're doing a free half-hour consultation for breast cancer survivors. So thanks for listening. This is Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy with sex therapist Laurie Watson and couples therapist Dr. Adam Mathews. Hey, help us stay on top here at Foreplay. We'd love it if you would subscribe and share it with your friends. And please take 1 sec and rate and review us. Thanks so much.